Thanks very much, Mike. It's interesting you say you don't know what transversal management is. I think most city officials would agree with you. It is essentially a way of, and I won't delve too much into it, but it's a way of trying to break down silos in city departments to think of new integrative ways and strategies that we can put our residents at the center of policy making and try and approach policy design and policy delivery systems in a truly cross-cutting and collaborative way. And now, it all sounds great. I'm sure you can recognize that I have the arrows in my back to prove how difficult breaking down silos are. But this session is not about transversal management. It's about trying to understand design policy and the challenges related to design policy. And I'm very fortunate to be joined on my left by quite an illustrious panel, very humbled. The first immediately on my left is Srini Srinivasan, who is the CEO of LUMIUM, which is an award-winning creative design company based both in Silicon Valley and in India that designs products and experiences for the medical field, consumer electronics, and mobile industries, and has worked with hundreds of companies, including many in the Fortune 500. He has over 25 years of design experience in numerous design fields, and is both a board member of ICSID and I believe a member of the advisory panel for World Design Capital 2014. And immediately to his left, I'm sure many of you know Erika here in Cape Town. Erika is the executive director of Cape Craft and Design Institute and has worked in a number of fields as a writer, designer, and strategic project manager, and is a visual artist by training, and is currently working with the Western Cape government, I believe, to come up with a design strategy for the region. And last year, I believe, was named the Social Entrepreneur of the Year by the Business Women's Association of the Western Cape. So very welcome to you, Erika. And last but certainly not least is Carlos Scheliga, who's joining us from Brazil today. Carlos is an engineer and industrial designer and has been working in those fields for more than 20 years. I won't embarrass myself by trying to pronounce Carlos's Portuguese titles and organizations that he is leader of, but in English at least, Carlos is the current president of the Brazilian Product Designer Association, and is a member of the Brazilian Design Biennial Committee at the Development Ministry of Brazil, and is co-owner of his own award-winning design and innovation company. And of particular interest to me in my field is a specialist in public transport and urban planning, working with the state government of Sao Paulo. So welcome to Carlos and welcome to the three of you. I think we've got an interesting session this afternoon, and I was a bit worried that we were going to be doomed by the after-lunch effect, but we seem to have a relatively full house. And I think we're going to have a great conversation about what are the challenges that face organizations and governments in trying to craft and come up with design policies. And more specifically, what does a design policy look like at a national level, a regional level, a local level, and trying to understand, for me it's coming from a government background, sometimes it's difficult to understand that there's life outside of government, right? And that really the role of government in policy areas is trying to enable the sectors and environments around government and give them the space to do what they need to do in order for society and the economy to thrive and grow, which was what Mike was saying just a little bit earlier. And so I guess for me the central questions that I face on a daily basis, as I'm sure you do as well, is what does a design policy do to break down silos, to create a systematic approach to entrenching creativity, and also, more broadly speaking, what does a design policy do to support the design industry? Now, does that support mean education? Does it mean promotion? Does it mean facilitation? What role does it do or does it have in trying to encourage competitive advantages using design, both in product design and a whole range of industries where design is the new normal? It's not a luxury or nice to have, and it's something that we need to find in order to become competitive in a whole host of ways. And so I guess for me, it's asking, what are the policy instruments that affect design policy? And it's interesting the level of experience we have here today. I'm going to ask Srini to be the first to maybe take us through some thoughts and a presentation.
Sure.
And I hand over to you.
Thank you, Craig. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm actually privileged to be here and participating in this wonderful and important conference in South Africa for the national policy making process. And I'd also like to say hi to my fellow ICSID folks, Brandon Geen, the President, Dilki, Secretary General, and the other board members of ICSID. And there's a very, very strong connection that I have with Africa, thanks to my friend and brother, Mugendi. So I just got introduced to him by my other friend, Pradyumna Vyas, in Taipei in 2011, and then that led to me to a real a magnetized person, coming towards South Africa more often, especially to Cape Town. So today we will discuss challenges that are faced in the manufacturing sector, especially with respect to the policy making and how do countries, try to grow. Because globally, a strong manufacturing base means a stable economy, stable fiscal policies, and also overall happiness. So if that doesn't happen, then we have a lot of challenges. And so I'd like to propose how do businesses are coping with the challenges of manufacturing, and how are the governments trying to help those industries in those countries which are trying to address this challenge of problems. So what are the global manufacturing trends that we are seeing? So very recent to last 10 years or so, if you look at it, the global manufacturing has become building closer ties, and they are delivering more value. So no longer it is just important for us to see, I go to this one manufacturing entity, but they expect the manufacturing to do everything that the consumer wants. And then the product line strategies are more global, multidisciplinary. No longer we can just go to one country for one thing and then take it to the next one. And very innovative and customer focused. We have seen this with the recent products that have come in, especially the Googles and the Apple and the Samsung products. Critical investments in supply chain technologies are increasing day by day. And instead of the traditional plant and the machinery, now more IT infrastructure is being invested in those manufacturing industries, globally speaking. What are the challenges for the manufacturing industry? This is again, any country could have the same problem. Globalization. So no longer we are able to say that, I'm a specialist in mining diamonds, in South Africa maybe for an example, or some other country claiming that they could do anything differently. So globalization is also a virtue that we all are forced to live with, and they also present a big challenge to the manufacturing industry today. Sustainable growth as an industry is a big problem. So we think we have made it. We made a huge investments of several $billion, and then we realize that some other country is taken over quickly, and suddenly all your investments are going down the tube. And then there's a heavy international competition. So you will see in the next couple of slides how the ranking changes very swiftly. And then investments in technology or lack of investment in technology, knowledge, and also manpower. Logistics of supply chain. Government tariff and other roadblocks that are there in every country that we know. Inverse ratio of cost is a very important barrier in our lives. While all other costs in manufacturing, be it the rents or the tariffs or the power or the human aspect of salaries and benefits and everything else, they keep on going up while the output is coming down. Or in other words, even if you produce the same number of units per year or per month, the value of those outputs are drastically coming down because the expectation of the consumer is to pay less and less and less. So this is what is globally affecting the manufacturing industry. If you look at the global manufacturing competitiveness, so I'm actually, with respect to South Africa, I'm borrowing a study that was done in 2013 by Deloitte. And there, China has been ranked, as we all know, they are the manufacturing giants of the globe today. And they are ranked number 1. And then we have Germany, US, and India, and other countries. But the same, if you look at the South Africa, I've just highlighted it. So they are number 24 today, as per the 2013 study. In moving forward 5 years from now, the chart looks much different. So we have still China as number 1, but India has gone to number 2, and then the Germany and US have been relegated. So now we have seen Brazil, which was actually in number 8. They are predicted to move to number 3, and so on. And if you look at the chart for South Africa, so they are more or less stable. They are in the same place as 24 and 25, so not much of a change. But in 5 years, South Africa as a nation has lost the opportunity to scale up in the because of the challenges that are there currently. Okay. So the drivers of manufacturing competitiveness, there are 2 forces. One is the government and the organizational challenges. From market forces, we have on the left side of my screen, which is talent-driven innovation, the cost of delivery, the usual issues on business. And on the right side, we have the economic. That is where the policy becomes very, very relevant in this context of how do we create a policy that is going to encourage and make sure that the factors that are business factors are going to produce a larger GDP, therefore larger progress for that particular country. So in the same report, I also saw the importance of the South African point of view in terms of what do they see as a manufacturing challenge. And if you look at the ranking from 1 to 10, a corresponding ranking on the rightmost column is a global rank of other manufacturers in other countries which are climbing the ladder. Their perspectives, if you look at the number 1, I just want to point a couple of issues here. Number 1 for South Africa is the cost and availability of labor, whereas the number 1 priority for the rest of the globe seems to be more talent-driven innovation. I think that is where South Africa can definitely pay more attention in terms of having a design-led policy or policy that encourages design, and that will increase the value of output, therefore change the mindset of the people to saying this is more priority to me than the rest of the other things. So I just wanted to enumerate 2 simple business manufacturing models that countries are adopting. So one is called a SCORE manufacturing model. This is not rocket science. It's simply you just have a plan, you source from the suppliers, make, deliver, and if the product is defective, you just take it back. So majority of the developing countries, including the African countries that have made the progress, they are adopting the SCORE manufacturing model, largely because of the fact that it is less investment oriented, and it is also gives an advantage of managing the fiscal planning of the company with the business planning of their clients. And it also gives a good 2 to 4 times the ROI, and that's why this business model is being practiced. As opposed to that, the distributed manufacturing model today takes advantage of there are no barriers in the globe today, right? You can look at the Amazons of the world and not the forest, but the company. They all, you can buy anything sitting in anywhere, while, you can just, all you need is a smartphone in your hand, and then you're all set, right? You could go and order anything and everything. And it takes advantage of the distributed manufacturing model. They produce somewhere else, somebody else is distributing, and somebody else is buying, and there's no connection seemingly between these 4 entities because you seamlessly are able to get what you want at the press of a button, and then, of course, at the press of a credit card. So the commerce runs very, very quickly and smoothly, but the challenge for this kind of model is you need a large infrastructure and you need a large investment portfolio. And that is one of the reasons, if you look at the previous slide, the developing countries are unable to set up let's say a delivery model all across the globe. It's going to cost you billions of dollars, as opposed to the SCORE model where you're saying, I have only $10 million, I'm going to order parts for $7 million, use the $3 million to produce, and then collect the money after 30 days or 60 days. So this is the other model, so we're not going to go too much into the model. Policies that are typically affecting or influencing manufacturing. The number one of all of the policies that affect manufacturing is IP and the protection that it gives in a country where they're trying to do that. So we have heard, lots about, IP. The US actually is very strong in IP protection, and similarly some of the European countries. So we have, you can quickly read through that. So immigration policies and energy policies. So what does a design policy aim for? They like to educate the lawmakers and the designers, bring about the best thinking, uniform, create better products, improve the standard of living, and stay tuned ahead of the competition. So this is what the design policies can do. Influence a better quality of education. 82% of the manufacturing people have a shortage of qualified manpower globally, not just for South Africa. And the government policymakers work together to bring about a supporting manufacturing. Maybe there is a preferred treatment for this. Happened in India, I've seen, where you cannot import a car because they wanted to make the local car makers go. But after some point in time, they opened the market, so it became a global competitive market again. So those are some of the things that the government can do. Proactive engagement. So this is where most of the developing countries are struggling, because it's very divided between the industry and the policymakers. There's a huge divide that needs to narrow. Regulatory adjustments have to be made so that the policies are very smooth. And then invest in a better standard of education, and also industry collaboration to coordinate and fund cross-border situations. How it can be done? So there are multiple ways. People have already spoken some of it. So this is what I think countries need to do, especially in a diverse economy like South Africa. So this would be a good, excellent way to identify and diagnose, design and implement. Of course, in the earlier speakers have said implementation is the most challenging thing for all of us out here, but that's something which we could do. And of course, the policy need to be monitored, how we are doing what we said we will do. Thank you.
Thank you, Srini. Let me then immediately ask you a question after that illuminating presentation. Where have you seen design policies being implemented effectively? What examples can you immediately think of?
I think from my growing up in India, I've seen a very control-driven economy up until 1990. When I was still in India, I moved to the US in 1990, so I could correlate the difference between chalk and cheese or black and white. So we could not get what we wanted to back in those days, because there was a very highly preventative legal and tax structure. If you need to import a watch, then you have to pay a duty. And if you're going to do any industrial goods, then you need to do that. The country really needed to balance their resources. So they deliberately wanted to have 1 billion people do something. So they put their policies in such a way that the local industry learns how to do, maybe mechanical engineering or electronics or whatever. Subsequently, they realized that it's not making any sense because you're not able to invest a foreign investment. So therefore, they allowed the others to come in. So there, now you have to compete in a better designed product. Whether it is automotive or industrial goods or anything else you need to do now, it's no longer a protected economy. You cannot give those, inferior, in a global scenario, you cannot sell the inferior products anymore, because the same population that was supporting or forced to buy is no longer buying those equipment, because you need to have a better. So when you are looking at a competing global products, the design need to improve, and therefore, earlier we are going to see NID talk about how the design policy is helping the country. I've seen better quality products coming through that, and then India Design Council was set up. There's a lot of design-related policies started coming from 1990 onwards.
Okay. Thinking about developing countries, I mean, you mentioned Africa, you mentioned China, and you've just obviously spoken about India. What is the tension between encouraging design and innovation as an economic choice, or perhaps relying on copying where others have designed or innovated successfully in order to get products to scale. Do you see a tension there?
Absolutely. So there is always a dilemma or even maybe a temptation for the business to see what they can cash quickly, because there's a huge gap between your investment of your first day to getting money. It could be anywhere between 2 years to 3 years. So the entrepreneurs try to cash in quickly, so they do have a temptation to adopt or re-adopt or copy, things like that. But in today's converged world, people are going through the Amazon part of it, so they no longer, they reject those products, even though they may first buy those products, they reject it. So therefore, even though it's a divided scenario, right? Half the people are unable to afford, so they go to the cheap imitations, and that market is still going to be there at least for a number of years. We can't change that. The other aspect of the business is when the GDP, it's a global problem, right? When the GDP of the country increases and the per capita income goes up, he no longer wants to buy the cheaper product, and that's coming through the education of better products in the market.
Okay, thanks, Srini. I'm going to move over to Erika now. Erika, you've got a very unique perspective on this region, and I'd be interested to hear, as I'm sure we all would be, your reflections on what design policy might mean to make the Western Cape competitive.
Thank you. I hope I'm going to manage to do this talk perching on this chair. I'm much more used to standing. So I hope I don't tip over at some stage.
That's your design challenge for this afternoon.
So I'm going to talk about the process that we've gone through in developing a design strategy for the Western Cape. And just a bit about the process and how we've arrived at where we are now. Just a little bit of background first. I think that often we don't give ourselves credit for how far we've come in a fairly purposeful way. And when I was preparing for this presentation, and in fact looking at the next slide, which somebody mentioned earlier this morning, the Danish design ladder, looking at in a way how perceptions and use of design improve as countries and economies and businesses get more sophisticated. And we've been saying, well, as the Western Cape, we think we're sort of sitting between 2 and 3. And our assumption is that we kind of have just arrived there somehow. And that actually, when I was looking at what has come before and the investment in the cultural industries, the creative industries, institutions like ourselves, Creative Cape Town, the Cape Town Furniture Initiative, etc., that actually we might have not have been conscious in terms of this design ladder, but actually we've been building the value and appreciation and use of design. Okay, the first thing that we had to do when looking at our strategy was figure out what do we mean by design, and obviously we're using the more current definition of design, which is part of moving us forward. In South Africa, I'm going to flip through a lot of my slides because in fact a lot of this has been covered by some of the previous speakers, but South Africa, we're awash with policy. So what we often grapple with, I think, as people working on the ground, is we have all of these fantastic policies, and actually what we struggle to do is to implement them. And in fact, the idea behind developing a Western Cape design strategy as opposed to a policy came from a stakeholder forum and a stakeholder discussion that I facilitated in 2011, where actually the outcome of that was that what we needed was a design awareness strategy. Because before we were ready for policy and developing a policy, we felt we actually needed to get all the players on board to understand what design is and what it was that we were trying to create. And in fact, the World Design Capital sort of shooed us along in that process and created an environment where we were able to really leverage off the opportunity of World Design Capital and get people having a conversation about design and what design is. So our big challenge in South Africa is we have the best constitution in the world and really, really, really very good policy. Hester was speaking about the NDP. We have, I think, there's a sort of a consensus in South Africa about the kind of country we would all like to live in. Of course, there's lots of debate and discussion and disagreement about how we get there. But these are some extracts from the National Development Plan about the dream that we have for a future South Africa. Our reality, I'm not going to go through it. Hester referred to the nine elements that the diagnostic reports talk about as the fundamentals of the fundamental problems that we face as South Africa. Okay, the South African economy. I think, in fact, listening to Srini talk about manufacturing industry and the fact that our manufacturing industry is not a very robust and resilient industry, and that our economy has major structural inequalities, means that we're in an environment that is very complex and very difficult to resolve. But of course, the other side of challenge is opportunity, and I think Mugendi spoke a lot about the possibilities of that, and that we sit in a place where we understand that design can help make ideas real. I think I must make maybe one rider about the policy and, in fact, the approach to design is that I think we must be careful of assuming that design is the silver bullet and that it's going to solve every single problem that we encounter in South Africa or the world. And so we need to be quite focused and purposeful about the way we use design and talk about design. So onto the strategy. I'm going to try to slow down a little bit now. But the strategy really asks about how do we use design to unlock innovation and build competitive advantage, because that's what we need to find additional value in our society and in our economy. We started off trying to understand the sector, so as a sort of emergent or immature sector in a way, with lots of debate and discussion about who is a designer and who isn't a designer, and what is design and what isn't design. We felt we needed to establish some parameters so that we could move on, not that we actually want to spend much time looking at that. So we explored understanding the sector, understanding the different occupational contexts that people work in, how the different design disciplines relate to each other. We also try to understand design in the economy, so design, how it fits into the creative industries, how design competencies and skills actually can service each other. I think Giselle made that point this morning, but how it also fits across the economy. Then we looked at what are the barriers in the ecosystem. I think these are fairly common in the developing economies and in a developing sector. And then we developed a design strategy. So unlike the NDP and all of the other policies that we heard about this morning, I'm very proud of this, because this is the one slide that represents the Western Cape Design Strategy. So we wanted to have a very simple, elegant way of capturing what we needed to do, what our priorities were, and in a way that everybody could buy into and participate in. So I think the key thing about the strategy is that it's trying to be demand-driven but inclusive. So we want all of the role players and all of the stakeholders in the ecosystem to understand that they're part of the ecosystem and that what they're doing is part of building the system. So we have 3 pillars: support, promote, and develop, and 4 strategic objectives: the development of design-ready businesses, the business-ready design practitioners, design in the public sector, and involved citizens. I think I'm going to run out of time, so I'm not going to go into that into too much detail. And now? Okay, so I think Giselle was very interesting that where fantastic policies and strategies often fail is in the implementation. And I think that we moved very quickly, some might say too quickly, into implementing. And I think that was in the, as I mentioned earlier, with World Design Capital kind of looming down upon us, we needed to get into place and to start doing things to be able to capture the energy that was created by World Design Capital. And I think this is a very astute comment from, in fact, one of a very one of our thought leaders in South Africa, that actually, and it's also part of a design thinking process, is come up with your idea, prototype it, implement it, and while you do it, think about what you're doing, the impact you're having, and correct. So we had a staged approach using this 2013, 2014 to get some things in place, and in a way are moving, hopefully with some more some calmness and a little bit more space after World Design Capital into more of an implementation phase. And I'm just going to talk through quickly some of the things that are in place. So support, the Cape Craft and Design Institute has been mandated to drive the implementation of the strategy. Provincial government is investing in the development of a design park and creating the infrastructure to support the sector. We're piloting a design innovation seed fund. We're piloting a challenge process to surface innovation. And we're looking at developing a sort of focused approach to bridging or creating connections between the design sector and various economies, various subsectors of the economy. In terms of promotion, there are a number of very important and very significant platforms where designers are being promoted. And I think one of our first steps post 2014 is to bring together the disparate platforms, the disparate people involved, to try and get people behind a sort of single brand. And then we have a very strong but developed component of the strategy, which is focusing on developing human capital. And we're looking at the whole education pipeline. Where do we impact on the development of the next generation of designers who are going to have the skills and the competencies required to help us take our economy forward? And then finally, some institutional arrangements that we're in the process of putting in place. And that, I think, is me. So I wanted to just to finish by saying the title of the conference is Make a Plan, but I think what is the critical addition to that is make a plan and implement it. Thank you.
Thanks, Erika. I suppose that the challenge for a successful design policy, at least inside an organization, is to understand how you mainstream design-led thinking so that your policy approach is truly integrative and not creating standalone discrete documents that gather dust. But I'm going to ask you a question and ask you to pace yourself when you answer it, because I suspect there might be a bit of an impassioned plea here. What's missing from the design ecosystem in the Western Cape? And what is government not doing to support design, and what should it be doing?
Sure. Who's sitting in the audience? I think, I think actually that the most important thing that is missing in the ecosystem is coordination and collaboration. I think we have an amazing provincial department. I'm thinking particularly of the Department of Economic Development and Tourism that in a way has been committed to this journey since the early 90s. And the city of Cape Town, lest I get smacked over the hand for that too. And I mean, I'm looking at the audience and seeing people in this audience that are very passionate about the design sector. They volunteer. They give extra hours in making things happen. But I think the process of coordinating those activities and in a way getting everybody together so that we understand we're colleagues and we're building something together. So in a way, I think it's not what is government not doing. I think it's what we need to facilitate in the environment, and I think that's starting to happen. But I think one other thing I do want to add, and I think you might have mentioned it, or somebody mentioned it, is planning for the long term. That I think it's another challenge we have in South Africa generally, is that we're in a very sort of short-term cycle. Even though the NDP is talking about South Africa 2030, we don't really have a plan That's for South Africa 2030. So what I would like to see in government is coordination between city, province, and national in 5-year development cycles where there's a commitment to a strategy and a plan and institutions and activities, and everybody knows where they're going.
Okay, so let me put it to you this way. Sometimes the only thing worse than collaboration or attempted collaboration between those 3 spheres of government is when they actually do collaborate and what they try and come up with. And I think everyone at all 3 spheres of government would say that. It's difficult. And because it's difficult, there's this whole notion that people will try and grab what is easy to do for themselves, and there's no accountability for what is hard. And that's understandable, right? Because each organization has their different mandates. So maybe I can ask you, what does the interface between government and the design industry look like? What is successful facilitation and collaboration? And maybe we can talk about it beyond sort of just a structural point of view, but your impressions based on your experience.
So, I mean, I'm sort of hesitant to say it because it's the organization that I come from, but I think that in many ways the Cape Crafts and Design Institute is an example of that because we're funded from national government, provincial government, and the city. And in a way, I think that we are positioned as an interface between the public sector and the private sector and individual designers. And I often think that what we do is we actually protect people from the sort of vagaries and the what, I don't know what you'd call it, of the public sector. So we act as a communicator or an interface.
Yeah.
But I think the key thing also about collaboration is that it needs to be purposeful. So if you're trying to collaborate because you're trying to collaborate, I think you're going to fail.
Yeah.
But if you're collaborating on the basis of a plan and an action because you're trying to achieve something, I think the chances of getting people together are much greater. And in fact, if I think back to just the early days of the CCDR, in a way what we did was we said we're on a train and the train is leaving the station and we are following a path and we want people to get onto the train and join the journey. And I sort of feel that that's what's happening now with the design strategy. We're on another plane. We're on a plane now, not on a train. And the train, we want, we're moving,
yeah.
And people need to jump on and come on board and help build the plane while we're flying it.
Okay, so you mentioned CCDI, and that's a great support organization for design in the region. Is there space for maybe different types of incubators or support networks to support the work that CCDI does? Is there room for more interventions that help encourage and facilitate the growth of, say, startup design industries?
Definitely. So, I mean, I think that's when we talk about the ecosystem, what we're wanting to create in the ecosystem is spaces for different things to happen. No one organization can be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
And I think it's about different organizations or individuals finding what is their place, what is the value, what is their core value addition into the ecosystem, and moving forward in that way.
Thanks. Well, thanks very much, Erika. I'm going to ask Carlos to take over here. And Carlos, obviously, you've got a very unique perspective as well, being in leadership positions in design authorities, having your own design company and working with government. What are your impressions on design policy?
First of all, I agree with Erika, and I think it's difficult to in our case, it's difficult to pass the idea what design means for the public sector, but also for the people in general. In Brazil, when you say that you have a son that studied design, the people really don't understand what your son is doing. It's like that. And I think in some way, mostly we are failing to give our contribution to make clear what kind of stuff we are doing.
Right.
It's not only beautiful or fancy things.
Okay.
And I think it's mostly about it. It's difficult for us to communicate.
All right. I believe you also have some slides for us that you're going to take us through.
I'm starting, first of all, for me it's a privilege to be here with you folks to talk about a little bit the Brazilian scene of design. And this panel is about challenges and opportunities. For me, it's challenging to show you 60 slides in 8 minutes, okay? But I think I have a great opportunity to learn a lot with you folks.
Right.
So, let's go. Let me introduce myself. So, my name is Carlos Eduardo Scheliga, aka Cadu. We have this kind of thing in Brazil. Everybody has a nickname. Mine is Cadu. I'm engineer, designer, and entrepreneur. So I have different points of view of things. I hope. So, and what am I doing in design industry? Questonor, I'm a co-owner of Questonor, okay? It's a design company, 21 years, focus on design and innovation, product, graphic, and so on, strategic, located in São Paulo. This is this kind of things that we are doing there, okay? We believe that design can transform the world and the people's lives. And we have also a home product brand called Nó Design. Nó in Portuguese it's note. It's note. This is the kind of cool stuff that we are doing, okay? So I'm also a counselor at Objeto Brasil. It's an NPO, 18 years old, focus on design promotion in Brazil and abroad. And this is the kind of action that we are doing there. Joyce Jopert Leal, it's our CEO. And also, I'm the current president of the Industrial Design Association of Brazil. It's an NPO, 12 years, represents professionals and students. Focus on design promotion, education. Some images. So, I'm from Brazil. Brazil is here. And we have a lot of different influences, so we are a real melting pot. And our cities. We have huge cities, different cities, some small cities, but the astonishing data is more than 80% of Brazilian, it's urban beings, okay, urbanoids. We have a lot of different traditions from the south to the north. And what is all this? It's about identity. In my opinion, identity is the key to develop places through design. It's to be different, okay? So the first inspiration, it's about native Brazilian, okay? And when we merge identity and business, we can do cool stuff like that, that could be so fashion. And also can inspire great designers. This hammock, so common for Indians, okay? And then inspired Sergio Rodrigues with this Molly armchair that is in the MoMA. He had died a month ago. Mm-hmm. Identity and social inclusion. When you take the set of knowledge and practices and also the materials that you have, you can improve people's lives with design. This is golden grass. It's a kind of grass that we have in Brazil. And also some crafts heritated by European people, like bobbin lace, that you can transform in products. Identity and its strategy. This flip-flop was in 70s, only poor people use this, okay? And then with some inspiring, colorful Brazil, okay, they transform in an icon, national icon, a fashion icon. And also in flagship store in São Paulo, the strategy look for some really cultural inspiration. The street market, and look at this, so cool. Identity and sustainability. You can also improve the life of the people that is doing life with trash, okay? So designer decided to create things from the craft paper with communities. Identity and language. It's so important because it could be your differential, okay? So we have the chapbook. It's also a European tradition, so common in northeast of Brazil. It's so craft, so typical, and then can inspire graphic works. And also the slums, inspiring Campana, the nature, the handicrafts. All the places are looking for create brands. São Paulo. This is so cool. It's the 450th anniversary of Rio. and it's so nice. So you can stamp, you know, when you have a strong brand, you can stamp yourself in the world. Like I love NY and Barcelona. You have several examples. And please welcome to Rio 2016, okay? Identity and better cities. In 2006, São Paulo decided to approve a clean city law. And it was really revolutionary because the law regulates the advertising in facade and also on the street. We do not have outdoors in São Paulo, no more. And it was completely revolutionary. The relationship between the citizen and the city has changed. I'm finishing, I swear. So, also, we are facing a phenomenon that the people, the community, the society started to do things for themselves in despite of public policies. So in São Paulo, this is a kind of tradition in Brazil. It's St. John party, feast, I don't know. And then the people occupy the city and do this kind of stuff, that it's something from the land of Brazil, and then they put it in the great big cities. This is and also a lot of people are doing parklets in São Paulo because we are a lack of space for people to be together, pop-up car parks, food parks and trucks. And all of this stuff is doing by the people. What city we want for the 21st century? That's the question. Okay? I think more fair, more human, more green, more sustainable. And the key for it is creative industries, own identity, unique experiences, popular participation, long-term policies, design-oriented. So this is the message that I would like to leave with you. With participation of citizen and lasting design policies, we have the opportunity to make cities great meeting points where converge the culture, the arts, creativity, diversity, equality, and citizenship. Thank you. I hope you enjoy.
I think we all enjoyed it, Carlos.
I'm sorry about the time.
No problem. But I'm going to ask you one question and then move on to the audience.
Sorry.
No, please. There's no apologies necessary. Carlos, let me ask you then specifically. You've spoken about, especially in the last part of your presentation, all of the great things that design can do for the urban environment. What can design policy do to enable those great achievements of design in the urban environment?
So, first of all, are you hearing me?
Yes, it's all good.
First of all, I think I really believe that design policies need to be a society decision. So you need to have the engagement of the citizen, and it needs to be made by law, and not it needs to be a state policy and not a government policy.
Yeah.
Because and then it's you need to shift the mindset so design can improve all the public services and make the people lives better in cities, because city is the natural environment of the human being. We want all the time to share something, to be together. In despite of internet and everything, it's our nature. Okay, so why we are doing bad with cities? That it's our own environment. So we need to shift the mindset, and so design can collaborate too much with it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Carlos. We're going to take a series of questions from the audience. I'm going to take 2 or 3 questions at a time, and if when you ask your question, please can you say who you are and where you're from and who you're directing your question to on the panel. You'll see the roving mics. This gentleman here in the 3rd row first, please.
Thank you, Program Director. My name is Raymond Vikani. I'm from Khayelitsha. I'm from a youth group that is actually Ukatleho Property Development and Real Estates and Special Developments. We're a group of young people, architects, QSs, real estate agencies that have come together. We're actually doing special development for Khayelitsha and KCT, Culture Community Trust. We're trying to redesign Khayelitsha. My question basically, I think, is to Erika and Carlos. First of all, I think I must thank you for an overwhelming presentation. The first question to you is, if possibly, Director Greg, if we can maybe get slides of most of the presentations, maybe later when we move out of, if that is possible. And then the second one, of course, is I see what comes up in most of the presentation is, I think, design policy in the context of South Africa itself. We are buying and selling houses, and one of our biggest challenges is people not buying our houses because of the spatial development framework of the past colonial systems and apartheid, whereby people are so Khayelitsha being bigger than Cape Town itself in terms of the land, but it's very far from the cities. People are not easily buying our products because we are living far from where they have to go to work. A simple scenario will be Khayelitsha has got a lot of municipality workers, but they work very far from where they live. Isn't it an ideal solution to come up with new towns, build new towns, and shy and move away from the current apartheid spatial development systems? Because my fear is to see ourselves after 15 years or 21 years coming back to these places and speaking about a lack of infrastructure, you know, deep divisions because of spatial designs and the way people has been placed in. So yeah, the question is that, am I correct? Will you agree with me if I say the best solution or the ideal best solution will be if in South Africa we can really start designing new towns and move away from the past apartheid designs, which is quite not actually really working. Thank you.
Fascinating question. Who else has their hand up? Yes, this gentleman in the front here, please.
Thank you. Hello. My name is Andrea. It's a question I don't know exactly to who, I think maybe for you. I think it's a question that I don't know exactly how we can put on politics design, but it's also another aspect. The aspect is the involvement of the citizen about how we want to see the city, and this is what the last presentation was. It was very interesting, and he speak about how we engage by law of the people. And I think there is something very interesting also in Western Cape, and the thinking is how we can transform and redesign the engagement of the people in the policy maker and the political decision, how we can transform the consultation that there is also some law that ask the city and the Copenhagen Provincial to involve the citizen in consultation, but how we can transform this consultation in participation, how we can redesign better system to make this kind of activity, and can it be part of politics design, this kind of activity? Thank you.
Okay, so those are two really big issues, big challenges. I mean, I think maybe what we didn't take into account as a nation actually in the transition from an apartheid system to a democratic system was how well designed apartheid was. That it was a system that was thought through. It was controlled. Every decision that was made was made for a purpose to achieve a particular outcome. And in a way, our response then in the democratic South Africa, with all the best intentions in the world, I think hasn't been as formulated, as structured. I mean, I think if just that point about the policies and they're not being able to implement the policies, and I think those are probably the reasons for that are also as a result of apartheid and the kind of conditions that we found ourselves in. And I'm not a town planner. You know, I mean, I think there are greater minds and greater people who are grappling with how do we break down the spatial inequalities that have been created through hundreds of years. I mean, in a way, the only thing I can propose, and it's something that we've been trying to do with our Better Living Challenge, and maybe it's the solution that design gives us, is let's find those examples and test some solutions. And I think the city's trying to do that. I think the ward projects that were run also as part of World Design Capital have been a way of let's try and work out a way of getting citizens involved in the process, and then how do we implement the ideas that came out of that and test the solution and then go back. And if we can do that more, so in other words, there's that African proverb of how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time, but that if we get more purposeful about the kinds of projects that we're doing and investing in those projects over a longer period of time, I think that's the best we can do, actually.
Thanks, Erika. Carlos? And remember, we're keeping it brief.
Sorry.
Okay. First of all, we have a situation in Brazil because of slavery that we didn't solve yet in 140 years, okay? And it's not an investment effort, I think. It's cultural and people engagement issue. So the society need to decide that we need to change our cities, our way to manage some problems. And for myself, for example, I believe that we spent like 50 years in the last 20th century make cities bigger and put out the unfavored people.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe in denser cities, okay, and that the people could participate of what kind of housing and what kind of economy activity you will have there. I think it's easier to go in the right way. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. Thanks, Carlos. Srini, can I ask you to answer the last question regarding manufacturing and investment in areas that are disenfranchised, under-resourced, have high rates of unemployment, and how you encourage sort of listening to local solutions to try and get local production?
See, the manufacturing is a line of business. Okay. Most of the companies that want to get into a business, they are looking for a return on investments. The return on investments need not be measured in rand or dollars. It could be some social value. As long as there is an enchanted people with the right amount of political will are able to create that ROI, which could be in the social justice or in the form of, making employment to an area, underdeveloped area, that's all it takes. As long as you keep the ROI as a nice dangling carrot in front of the industries, they will come.
Okay. Thanks very much, Srini. Just very quickly to answer your question, sir, that how do governments more effectively collaborate with residents? I agree with you that effective public participation or public engagement shouldn't be about what we conventionally do, which is we will produce a document, we will then give an advertisement in a newspaper, and if maybe you've written in or if you haven't, we've consulted with you. That's not effective engagement. Effective engagement is something we're trying to move away in the city, move towards in the city, excuse me. That's a rather interesting slip of the tongue. But it really is something where it's about how we approach policy making. And we approach policy making from moving away from saying, here is the discrete problem that we are facing as a government. Let's say it's a water production issue or a water service issue. And that is the only issue we will look at in this policy. And then we will ask for your engagement once we have come up with the engineering specifications, etc., towards a system where we say, what is the issue that these residents are facing in a particular area? And there are numerous issues that are all interrelated to each other. And we start there with the resident and say how many different things are impacting on the way that these residents live their lives and the way that they interact with city services. And maybe the water problem is the start, but the water problem is leading to all sorts of other utilities problems. It's leading to our customer interfaces or resident interfaces. It's leading to a whole lot of backdoor, back office business processes and IT systems. That is a truly integrative approach to solving a problem that a particular area and a particular group of residents are having that involves those residents as well and their user experience. That's the approach we're trying to move towards. It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one because we're trying to change, an oil tanker and its approach to policy engagement that is easy to one that is meaningful. So that's the best I can do in this short, limited amount of time, and just say thank you very much to our excellent panel. I think they've done great today, and if we can please just give them a hand. Thank you very much.